Hello, I'm Jenny McMinn, partner in charge of impact and innovation at Windmill Developments. Windmill is partnering with the City of Guelph to lead the redevelopment of a downtown vacant parking lot, transforming it into a resilient mixed-use community called the Baker District. The Baker District seeks to become a model sustainable community where residents and visitors alike are empowered to lead happy and healthy lives. Unique to this project is a focus on making the Baker District a community that promotes and celebrates local and sustainable food. As you may know, Guelph already has a thriving food community, and the Baker District aims to both strengthen and support it. Through this speaker series, we intend to shed a spotlight on leaders within the Guelph food community who are already helping to create a more sustainable, accessible, and resilient food system. Together, we will explore what it takes to build a better food future. Thanks so much for joining us today. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today on our food series, focusing on local experts in the Guelph community. We have Jamie Miller joining us. Jamie Miller runs a consulting practice called Biomimicry Frontiers. And Jamie, maybe you can shed a little bit of light on the work that you do, and specifically in the City of Guelph.
Sure. Biomimicry Frontiers is an award-winning sustainability consultancy. We leverage the genius of nature to solve the problems that we're tasked with. With the City of Guelph, we're currently working on their $10 million grant to create the first circular food economy.
How did you come to learn about biomimicry?
I learned about biomimicry through Janine Benyus, the woman who wrote the book, Biomimicry Innovation Inspired by Nature. Prior to that, how I found her was through an elective at Queen's University where the elective was math and poetry. And in it, we explored the Fibonacci spiral and the Fibonacci sequence. And the professor had us explore that sequence and that spiral in nature, and we saw that spirals in the packaging of sunflower seeds and in pine cones, and the way that waves curl. And so for whatever reason, my mind kind of switched and flipped at that moment, and I recognized that nature is a textbook of brilliant ideas for how to do design. And as a young engineering student, that fundamentally changed how I saw design and engineering. And that was back in 2004. So I've been exploring this for 16 years.
Wow. What can nature teach us about building sustainable, resilient food systems?
I mean, a lot. If you nature is
just a quick answer.
Yeah. It's the most sustainable system on this planet. When you recognize it's been doing what it's doing for 3.8 billion years, you can learn a lot. One of the biggest things that I've learned is learning from diversity. Natural systems inherently go to higher diversity. And we tend to homogenize and keep things somewhat simpler. So that's one of the big things we can learn about a resilient food system, is to incorporate more diversity and more redundancies. So whether that's having more food production at smaller scales, like really promoting backyard gardening or community agriculture, or it could be just the way that we actually do planting. A natural system will naturally create equilibrium with itself. If we let nature be, it finds equilibrium. And within that equilibrium, we could be more strategic and plant things using permaculture ideas that we can eat and that support our diet. And then that really means that we don't have to use that many chemicals. We can use natural predation and natural relationships to build a resilient food system.
And maybe just building on that concept of how and what we can learn from nature, it's interesting to think about the food systems. How can, or what can nature teach us in terms of how we operate businesses? Are there any lessons to be learned from that?
The thing about humans is that we have a unique capability of building unnatural systems.
Right.
Because we can harness stored energy in things like wood and oil, we can recreate our environments. So that's really what we've done with agriculture, and it's been really successful for feeding us. But whenever you create an unnatural system, it takes a lot of energy inputs to keep it that way because the environment wants to change it. And so that's why it takes a lot of chemicals and energy inputs to maintain a system. And that's the same for a business. When a business is not in tune with its environment, its clients, the population, the market, it takes energy to maintain it. And the problem is, and what we can learn from nature is that when you're out of equilibrium with your environments, you're at a greater risk of collapse. And so as a business, you can fail at smaller scales. And when you fail at smaller scales or learn at smaller scales, you're constantly picking up information and feedback mechanisms to learn how to adapt to the environmental condition. So communication and small scale disruption is what keeps ecosystems resilient. And to give you an example in nature, ants are a great metaphor for how to run a business, because you have all of these individual workers that doesn't have a hierarchy. There's no leader in an ant colony, and yet they all work so coherently together and really beautifully. What they're doing is they're having multiple feedback mechanisms. So anytime two ants pass each other, their antenna will touch and they'll communicate what's going on. They also use pheromones to track out where the food sources are. And they align their skills with the common purpose of survival and thriving. And that allows this cohesion, this communication, this knowing what you're good at and aligning with what you're good at. That creates a cohesion. And that's just a couple ways we can learn from the natural world. Fail at small scale, rapid communication, and really aligning, aligning workers with what they're really meant to be doing, what's their inner purpose, and then having that be aligned with the larger goal of the company.
One other topic that certainly fits well into this space is circular food economy. And you talked about waste streams when you were first describing biomimicry. Maybe you could help the audience understand what a circular food economy is.
Sure. A circular food economy is where we turn waste streams into new businesses.
Right.
A great example is something called cardboard to caviar by a man named Graham Wiles. The cardboard to caviar is an example of taking a waste product and using it multiple times to create new businesses. So what he did was he went to a restaurant and was paid to take away their cardboard. He used that cardboard and shredded it and found a horse stable that needed bedding. That shredded cardboard was purchased by the horse stable to use as bedding. And once it was done, Graham again purchased that used bedding now with organics in it and turned it into compost. He specifically used vermicompost, which uses worms to decompose things. And from that, used the worms to feed sturgeon. The sturgeon made eggs, which is caviar, which is a very expensive, beautiful food that he actually sold back to the restaurant. So that's an example of a circular food economy.
Wow, that's fascinating and brilliant business moves as well. What about Guelph? So you're a resident of Guelph. You work in Guelph. You're very connected to the food economy and community in Guelph. What is it you love about Guelph and specifically the food community that you've come to know?
Well, I love that Guelph was built on food. We have Ontario's Ministry of Agriculture, OMAFRA, is based here. We have a university that's dedicated to food science and food research. We have an agricultural background and community, but we're also an innovative community. We've always had this innovative touch where we've piloted lots of interesting examples of ways of doing things, whether it be urban design or in agriculture and food or environmental sustainability. It seems like we're a forward-looking city that's not afraid to do those small-scale pilots and those small-scale testing. That's what I really love about this, and what I'm excited about with this particular project is that hopefully the things that we learn in Guelph from the circular food economy, we can share those principles and practices and philosophies with other patches around the world, recognizing that every individual community has its own talents, its own resources, its own skills and environment. but maybe there are principles that we can take and really share that help make a more resilient food system. We've learned with COVID-19 that food system is one of the fundamental systems that we need to protect and ensure are resilient. And so growing up myself in the country from a farming background, I know how important food is, but I also know that food and urban environments are all about community. And I think that's another aspect about Guelph is we have an incredible community of innovators and forward thinkers and people who want to work together.
That's very exciting. Seems like a great place to be, particularly in this space. With all of the energy and momentum and expertise that Guelph has, what do you see as the vision for Guelph's food future?
I think we have a common vision in that we want to see what we've learned here replicated. Like I said, the principles, practices, the ideas, we'd love to see communities around the world taking this on and elevating the importance of food and food in urban resilience. The old model of importation, where food came in and waste went out, is not sustainable. Being separated from our food system like that and the environmental degradation of our importation is not sustainable. So if we can bring the things that we learn from this case study and share it with other urban environments and rural environments, that's the vision, is how can we make a resilient food system that's shareable and replicable.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing all your insights today. I look forward to seeing the fruits of the labor, so to speak, as we move towards that shared food future that situates Guelph with a more responsible, resilient food community. Thanks again, Jamie, for taking the time, and we look forward to speaking with you further. Thanks.
Thank you so much.